I had 130 agents turn me down, Then we had probably 100 publishers. And as it happened, we landed one of the largest in the world. Bloomsbury is London-based, and they were the original publishers of Harry Potter. They were the original publishers of Agatha Christie. So things worked out.
For nearly 40 years, Jerry Jamison has been an award-winning advertising copywriter with more than 60 national writing commendations during his career. As the principal in a California-based advertising agency, he helped create and guide successful and memorable campaigns for a wide range of clients throughout the country. Writing books was a natural next step for him, and following his years as a novelist, Jerry now focuses on stories based on true events in history. He joins me today on Uncorking a Story to discuss his career and latest book, Vanishing Act, A Crashed Airliner, Fake Death, and Backroom Abortions. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Jerry.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm happy to have you here, Jerry. I'm curious, where does your story as an author begin?
Well, I think, as you mentioned, I put in a lot of years in the advertising agency business. I owned a firm, a large national firm in the San Diego area. And in that role, among other roles, I was the primary copywriter for the firm. So always a writer, but our clients were financial services, really large international financial services. And when you write for financial services, there are really strict parameters on everything you say, more accurately, everything you can't say. And so as a writer, although I very much enjoyed my career and was honored in a lot of ways with my work, it's extremely restrictive from a creative standpoint. I mean, you can almost not use adverbs and adjectives in what you write. So after a lot of years of talking about real estate investment trusts and fixed annuities and such, I decided to just flex my creative muscles a little bit, really just for fun, and started writing novels, and that turned out to be a successful venture. And then I eventually retired and was able to dedicate full-time effort to writing. Wrote over 30 novels that are published and online now. And then I moved in the course of this whole experience, and actually in the course of developing a particular campaign for a client, I came across the story that would be the seed, would be the germination for this book, Vanishing Act, which is out and in bookstores today.
You know, I hear what you're saying about financial services being restrictive, because I spent a lot of time. I grew up in the advertising business, not as a creative, but as I don't know what you even call the job anymore. I was a qualitative researcher. They call them account planners now. It's kind of I don't know. The industry has changed so much, but I work at a large financial services firm, and restrictive is a good word.
You work for a financial services firm, huh?
I do. That's the day job.
That's an interesting connection for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell me about this seed that was planted during way back when. How did it lead to this book?
Well, in the most unexpected way, really. I was developing a campaign for a client, not a financial services one, but a different client, and I wanted to do a retro vintage campaign. I really kind of wanted the look and feel of that, and I didn't want to look at what other people had done to replicate the era. I wanted to really go back and experience the advertising of the 1940s and 50s myself, to develop what I hoped would be a very authentic campaign. And so to do that, I kind of took an unusual step, and that was I just went to eBay and ordered a whole lot of magazines, Lifetime, Popular Mechanics, a lot of women's magazines, and I just wanted to flip through the pages and look at the advertising. I wanted to see what the the typefaces were, what the writing style was, photography, illustration, layout, design. I even wanted to smell the paper and hold the magazine. I wanted to enter that era, and which is, of course, the Mad Men era of television, and just really kind of get in there and get that feel, get that vibe. And I was just flipping through pages one after another, fascinating in their own right. And I was in a Life magazine, and I turned a page, and it said, "Man downs airliner to fake death." And it was such a staggering headline. It wasn't a long article, but it was such a staggering headline. A headline that over the top said, "This is true." Because I think from the very outset, they thought the readers would be, well, this can't possibly true. You don't down an entire airliner full of passengers to fake your death. And yet, as we dove into it, I have a full-time researcher. As we dove into it, we were just stunned by the complexity of the story and the life of the man, which is, virtually unknown today. I mean, he was big for a small stretch of time, and then he completely disappeared, and actually disappeared into the Nixon-Kennedy campaign world of that time. And so his story just was gone, and to be forgotten really for all time, until we went back and unearthed him, not just this event, but his life turned out to be massively huge, a huge life story. Weird.
How long between, finding that article, and I think you said Life magazine?
Yes.
Between writing that article and then, taking the time to write this book, what was the time lapse?
It was about 1 year period of time. But when I say that, I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I could dedicate full time to this. I was at a point in my career where other people were doing most of what I used to do. And I got up at 6 and 7 in the morning, and I wrote until the evening, 7 days a week, the weekends. And my researcher was, alongside, doing hard work, digging, locating information. So it was a very, very intense project, a project that, impacted me too, because I got to know this guy so intimately, a human that really nobody knew anything about. And it was a very intense period in my life as I developed this. And then, when my agent submitted it to the publisher, they started out where everybody else did. Is this really a true story? So I think it's that wild of a story.
I mean, it rings like DB Cooper, because you hear stories about him. And did he jump out of the plane? Did he have a parachute? Where's the money? But man, he took down. How did he take down an airliner?
Well, he was actually out on bail. So he has this very complex story. He was a career criminal. He was a career con man, a fraudster. So he was just constantly working schemes and scams and cons. He had done that his whole life. From the day he got out of it, he went to a reformatory at 12. And from the day he got out of that, he was working major scams. And so he had ended up in federal or state penitentiaries 12 different times in his life. So there's 12 different penitentiaries. So all over the country, he had been imprisoned. And this was in a sense, the last one. He had been arrested in Los Angeles, and he was out on bail. And he just decided, I'm not going to prison one more time. I'm not going back. And that's all there is to it. And he was in Los Angeles. Instead of getting in a car and driving to Mexico, 2 hours away, he came up with this heinous scheme that he would book a flight on a plane so that his name was on the manifest. And then he would figure out how to get someone to take his place on that plane. And it's exactly what he did. What he chose, the person he chose, was his very closest, dearest, best friend of his entire life. A 30-year, they were best men in each other's weddings. Their families were close. They traveled together. Very, very dear friends. And he talked this friend into, and in the 1950s, you could buy a plane ticket and hand it to somebody else, and they could just take your place. There was no TSA. There was no check. It was just, if you have a ticket, you get on board. And that's what he did. He put his friend on board through some machinations to get him to do that.
Yeah. I mean, this guy's a true sociopath. I mean, I'd imagine if you type in the word sociopath into Wikipedia, this guy's face has to come up.
Yeah, you would think, except he's unknown today. This is really the only in-depth coverage of this man's life. And he had 26 different aliases. By that, I mean criminal aliases that, that we were able to track down, which made the challenge of researching and writing this project incredibly difficult because, it's not like, if you look up D.B. Cooper, for instance, on Wikipedia or in any number of books, well, here's his story. This is who he is. This is what happened. This is the ending. That's not true of Dr. Robert Spears. Because with 26 different aliases and only old newspapers to work with, we went back to the 1920s in terms of tracking down newspapers. We could find a whole story on someone, but he's not the same name. And it's not until it's kind of a triangulation kind of a process. Wait, this guy did this scam. That sounds similar to that scam. Let's track this down. Let's get the records from Miami State Penitentiary, and let's cross-reference those with Leavenworth, and oh yeah, that name is this person. And so it was a massive puzzle. And actually, when we published the book, he had 24 aliases. Today, I found, in the last few months, I found 2 more. He just keeps popping up.
Yeah, the gift that keeps on giving. You mentioned Dr. Spears. Is it fair to say that he may not have been a real medical doctor?
You would think that, wouldn't you? And you would be right. There's nothing in his entire life that was authentic, ever. So he never went to medical school. He purchased his medical certificate, let's say, his medical license from the back of a trunk. A man, actually a legitimate doctor, psychiatrist, sold him a license. He had never gone to college. He purchased a degree, a diploma from a university. He had never gone to high school. He had never, to my knowledge, gone to elementary school. He had no education whatsoever. He was, at the time of the events we're talking about, the president of the American Naturopathic Association. He had risen to become the president of the top association in which he belonged. And it's important for your listeners to understand, Mike, that in the 1940s, the number of men who were registered in the American Medical Association, the AMA, was the same number as were in the American Naturopathic Association, which is to say, naturopathic, if your listeners, is holistic medicine. It's still, popular and familiar today. But there was an equal number of members in both those associations, and that's because in the 1940s, there was a massive, and this will ring familiar, a massive distrust of vaccines. Actually, that all changed when the polio vaccine came out and people said, I'm not putting that in my body. And then they realized, oh, it protects you against that. So, but up to that point, most Americans were more comfortable with the remedies that their mothers and their grandmothers had told them. If you drink this, if you put this poultice on your sore shoulder, this is going to work. The idea of taking a pill that was created in a laboratory was frightening to people. Therefore, a naturopath, which was kind of a blending of both of those disciplines, extremely influential. And he was, this man with no education whatsoever, the president of the association, even went before congressional hearings to defend, their discipline.
Wow. And when did the abortions come into play?
The abortions were purely an economic move on his part. He had been this naturopath, so he was always involved in, if you use this electrical equipment and it'll make you jiggle and you'll lose weight, you use this and your breasts will get bigger. If you drink this potion, I mean, he was doing that stuff all the time, literally making it up as he went. He would kind of in the Tupperware model. He set up little multi-level marketing things in towns where he would take. He called it his milk routes, and there was these older women that he would go and tell them they were beautiful, but they could lose some weight, and this type of thing. And then he was in Maryland at the time, and he started following Dallas, Texas. About this time is when the huge, the oil explosion in Dallas and in Houston came about, and all these oil wells were being discovered, which made certain men phenomenally wealthy, comparable to some of the things we're seeing today, where there's just massive, massive wealth that they really didn't even have to work for. I mean, they were just there getting wealthier and wealthier. And he just put together in his mind that if you had wealthy, powerful men who had pretty secretaries, it was only a matter of time until there was an epidemic of unwanted pregnancies. So he did his research, and he realized that there was only one state in the entire nation that allowed a doctor to transfer his medical license without any additional certification or review, and would just accept it at face value, and that state was Texas. So he moved to Texas. His doctor, he was a doctor of naturopathy. However, in the process, he changed it to Dr. Spears, MD, called himself an OBGYN, and shifted to Dallas and became very, very wealthy in the industry I just described.
Yeah.
There was no shortage of a need for abortions. Of course, people have to remember it was illegal, but there was no shortage of a need. And he would do 5, 6, 7 abortions every single day in his clinic. And he charged $5,000 an abortion in the 1950s, which is equivalent to $50,000 an abortion today. So he became very wealthy, very influential. Beautiful brick Southern home in the most exclusive part of town, socialite wife, 2 beautiful children. I mean, he really had, the world by the tail at that point.
I mean, how does he even learn how to do the procedure?
Well, ironically, there was an entire subset of naturopaths, and it was just a cover for abortionists. They did nothing else. Now, that's not to say it was everybody. And there were certainly believers in a holistic approach to medicine. But there was a subset that only did abortion and nothing else. They had almost no interest in anything else. A certain irony in the fact that he was the president of the association. But they basically taught each other. They were friends. They knew each other. There was a network of abortionists. Abortion... I'd like your listeners to think differently about abortion, because in this era, we all have a perspective of it as dark back alley procedures with clothes hangers. And this was anything but that. These were clinics with sterilized equipment, with stainless steel tables. They had very sophisticated means, and they had, like any procedure, I guess somebody can learn a medical procedure from someone else. It was all they did. And he advertised, I have copies of his ads from the Dallas Morning News, where he said, a specialist in female problems. And that was code for unwanted pregnancy. And so men would come and bring their mistresses, their girlfriends, willing to pay big money. And the entire system was supported by the police, by law enforcement, by the judicial system, by the judges, the lawyers, because it was considered to be a necessary thing for Dallas society. Because had these men started getting picked up for really, it wouldn't have been the abortion, it would have been the immorality charge that they were concerned about, which would destroy them socially. They knew that male Dallas society would probably collapse overnight if if cops were arresting people on morality charges, which they had every right to do. So they just dealt with this issue. They just dealt with this issue in their systems. And he was the beneficiary of it.
So what eventually became of him? It sounds like the guy's almost, he's sociopathic, but he's kind of a genius too. He's not a dummy in the fact that he knows how to make markets. He knows how to, he knows how to, and I'm sure he must have been a great talker to build confidence with people.
Yeah, he was, by all accounts, extremely charismatic. He was, especially in his younger years, he was very handsome. He was a decorated military officer, which he actually did. Now, the reason he joined the Army, and this would have been for World War I, the reason he joined the Army is because he was a teenager and a judge said, you have two choices, young man. You can go to an adult prison or you can join the Army. He joined the Army, became a marksman. He was decorated and got out in San Francisco after the war. And by the end of that week, he was already working a con on a very, very wealthy family in Oakland. So we don't have enough time to go into his whole life, but for readers of the book, first of all, the book's written it's not written like a nonfiction compendium. It's like a novel. It's a page-turning novel because this man's life was it was a series of cliffhangers. Your listeners that are familiar with with the movie Catch Me If You Can, which was Tom Hanks and Leo DiCaprio, this idea that there's a scammer who, changes his personas all the time, and a law enforcement officer, an FBI agent that's on his trail all the time, and it's a constantly just missing him type of thing. This was very much his life as people, and eventually as the FBI. The J. Edgar Hoover called an entire press conference saying, "I want this man." So he was a criminal hero in a way. You also have to remember, coming out of the 1930s and 40s, like in Chicago, the whole gangster era, the Untouchables, all of that were kind of elevated to a hero status. Al Capone was a bad guy, but he was a popular bad guy, that type of thing. And I really think Dr. Spears envisioned himself as that kind of a person. Like, it's fun to get away with things. He really enjoyed what he did. Like you said, he was brilliant at what he did, and it was so effortless for him to con people. He could con anybody at any time, and he would flaunt his wealth. He would flaunt his stolen booty. Many times he'd be arrested by the end of the week. No problem. He'd go to prison again. A dozen times he was in different penitentiaries, not jails, penitentiaries. And, he'd get a 5 or 10 year sentence. I don't know if he ever served even 2 years. He was such a model inmate, and he was a great cook, and he was a friend of all the guards and the wardens, and they just let him out. And again, by the end of that week, he would get out. He would be working a scam again, making tens of thousands of dollars.
So when in this story does he fake his death? Was it after his time in Dallas, or?
Yes. So he's in Dallas. He's wealthy, but he's greedy. And he decides to go into partnership with another abortionist who's very, very successful in the Los Angeles area. Now, this man, whose name is Don Loomis, I was able to get a hold of. By the way, I got all the FBI records on this case that no one had ever seen before. I was able to get them from Freedom of Information Act, just unveiling so much stuff. But when he's in Los Angeles, I found an MGM memo that talks about Don Loomis as one of their employees, an MGM employee. And while just so happened I was doing research on another book about a golden age actress, writing a biography on her. And I read all the movie magazines of the era, over 10,000 of them, and they kept referring to an epidemic of appendicitis among Hollywood starlets. And the MGM memo said, we will call an abortion an appendectomy. And Don Loomis was the on-staff abortionist for MGM Studios. So Dr. Spears and Don Loomis decided to go into business together. Dr. Spears bringing his rich oil friend clientele, and Dr. Loomis bringing his Hollywood clientele. And they set up, Dr. Loomis bought a home in Los Angeles and got a call one day. A young woman, a 22-year-old elementary school teacher who was pregnant, and in that time would have lost her job for becoming pregnant. So her boyfriend arranges a meeting, and they go to in Santa Monica, beachside motel, and he meets her there. But he does something different that he had not. He had been developing what he called a purple paste. He named it Euroclear. And going back to his brilliance, he realized I can only do so many procedures in a day, which means I can only make so much money in a day. And he started to realize the business of abortion would be moving into mail order. It would be a mail order business for him to make money. So he developed this paste, this purple paste, and he injected it in this woman. And it literally melted her insides completely. It turns out that it was primarily lye. The primary ingredients was lye, and it just melted her insides. And they rushed her to UCLA Medical Hospital at the time. And up to this point, with thousands of abortions under his belt, under both of those men's belt, no woman had ever complained or filed a report with the police. Nobody. And the reason was, in that time, the person who would get arrested was the woman, not the man, probably not the doctor. It was the woman who would be arrested and go to jail because she did the illegal act. And as a result, there was no woman. First of all, the shame of it all. But secondly, if she said, this man did this to me, she goes to jail. She knows full well he's not. So nobody would ever step forward until this woman in UCLA and her boyfriend called up the police immediately and said, here's his name, here's where he lives, there's where the motel was, this is what he charged, there's the whole operation. And they came in and they arrested him. And so he was arrested. He was positive he would get out because he had paid off everybody along the process. And while he was on bail, this Tom Hanks character in Catch Me If You Can, whose name was Lieutenant Xander, just decided, I am not going to let him off. I am going to track him down. I'm going to make sure he goes to prison. And this time, Dr. Spears was confident he was really going to end up with serious prison time. And so he decides, I'm going to fake my death. Unbelievably, at the cost of the entire passenger list and crew and captain of an airliner. He's willing to take everybody down to fake his death. And sure enough, after the plane went down, all the newspapers we found the next day list among the tragedies a renowned OBGYN from Dallas who was killed on the plane. And of course, he was in hiding by that time.
How did he take the plane down?
Well, as I mentioned, Yeah. So he was in Los Angeles. He called his best friend who happened to be living in Tampa. Again, I have to stress, a really dear friend. And said, I've set up a business opportunity in Dallas. We are going to make literally $1 million. You are going to be so wealthy. Meet me at the Tampa International Airport at the coffee shop. Let's talk. They're there. The waitresses remember them laughing and having a great time. Close to midnight. The flight was a midnight flight. They had dinner. He tells his friend, tell you what, you drive out to Dallas. I'm going to take the return flight back. I've got a return flight. You take there. We're going to meet tomorrow. I have the meetings all set up. And he has the whole thing arranged. And at the last minute, according to him, his friend, Al Taylor, says, oh, my neck is just killing me. I was in an accident a couple of weeks ago. My neck is killing me. Dr. Spear said, as his closest friend and as a good citizen, I said, tell you what, you give me your wallet, your keys, your registration, and I'll take your car and drive to Dallas. You take my plane ticket. It's only an hour flight. You just relax and have a good time. But there's only one thing I want you to do, is I have this package, which is filled with cash, so don't lose it. And as soon as you arrive, you need to take it to my wife because she needs this cash. He said, not a problem. Thank you so much. He got on the plane, slid the brown parcel under his seat, and leaned back to enjoy the flight. And 22 minutes later, the entire plane exploded. It went so deep into the Gulf of Mexico that to this day, it's never been recovered.
Oh my gosh. So was it
deeper than any diver could ever go?
Was the package a bomb?
It was a time bomb. He had set the time bomb right before he gave it to him. And it was a timer based on a camera shutter, a time delay. And they found parts of the bomb floating in the water.
Oh my gosh.
So it blew up the entire plane. And that emotionally, Mike, the hardest part in doing all this is after any tragedy, like any tragedy that would happen today, the next day in the paper, there were all these stories, the individual stories. You see the pictures. This person was on the way to her wedding. This was just a couple days before Thanksgiving. So this family was going home to see their grandchild for the first time. All these stories. And this flight had originated in New York, went to Miami, went to Tampa, was going to Dallas, and then would end up in Los Angeles. So they were gathering people all across the country, and just heartbreaking story. Two children. I mean, just really, really difficult stories.
Well, I don't want to ask you how it ends because I think we need people to buy the book to figure that out. So but I do really want to know, did he get away with it? But I don't want you to tell me because
the ending is as exciting and has as many twists and turns as everything we've talked about up to this point, because it ends in some strange and unusual ways.
Well, very good. We'll end the conversation about the book there, so people can. Hopefully we've whet the appetite of some people who will, who will go and buy it. But I'm curious, Jerry, with your advertising background, I always like to talk to authors about the business side of being an author, because that's, a lot of people think, hey, being an author is about sitting alone in a room and writing a book. But there is, and that's part of it. I mean, that's part of the work, but the other part is getting out there and selling it. Have you been able to lean into your advertising background to help, to help push books, to help, become a successful author?
Well, I think I think the biggest takeaway from that is not so much kind of the classic advertising part, which would mean advertising and marketing would be, how do you promote a product, which I have decades of experience in. I think the primary carryover for me is drive, the drive to be successful at something. And, I hired lots of artists and writers and designers and programmers in my time. But as the head of the agency, you don't sleep. It's it's a very driven field that is dominated by deadlines. And when I mean deadlines, I don't mean, hey, could you get this for us in 6 months? I mean, by the end of this day, I need this, this commercial written and storyboarded. The writing of the book, the research of the writing of the book was like recess to me. I mean, that was just pure joy. I woke up every morning. I was excited to write and to discover. The business is radically different, as you touched on. That is, I think it's a little closer to an actor or an actress being discovered in Hollywood. You can have tremendous talent. You can have a tremendous resume. You can have everything you need to succeed, but you have to have breaks. And that was maybe the biggest eye opener. I thought if you write a good book, then it gets published and it becomes a bestseller. That's the entire experience. And, there are agents, there are editors, there are acquisition people at publishers, there's competition, and there's some difficult waters to navigate. But if you want something bad enough and you believe in yourself sufficiently, I think that's what I would share with any young writer, any burgeoning writer. And everybody's heard it, but don't give up if you believe in yourself. Do not give up, because all along the way, people are going to, I had 130 agents turn me down. I don't even want to talk to you about your book, Then we had probably 100 publishers. And as it happened, we landed one of the largest in the world. Bloomsbury is London-based. They were the original publishers of Harry Potter. They were the original publishers of Agatha Christie. So things worked out, and I'm grateful. I feel blessed for that. Boy, but at any point along the way, Mike, it would have been really easy to say that's it. I think. Man,
I know. I mean, and it's funny, all those agents, they're always looking for something new and different and creative, yet all of their rejection letters are the exact same.
How true is that? How true is that? They are all exact. I love your book. I think it will be very successful. However, it isn't a good fit for me. But it is interesting because almost everybody said nobody will ever care about a story that's an old story. They want the Murdoch murders. They want Dateline. They want 48 Hours. Nobody cares about an old story. And yet that's proven to be the fascination of the story, because how could a story so big and so profound be so forgotten? And it does tell us a little bit about our own current culture, I think, where we just move on so quickly. There's just a news cycle and then you move on fast. So this book has some legs, and I'm really pleased with that.
Yeah, well, it sounds like an exciting read. I can't wait to dig into it on my summer vacation. Jerry, where can people learn more about you? Do you have a website? Are you active on social media if people want to follow you somewhere?
Sure. First of all, I just wanted to say one other thing about the book really quickly. One is there's a really extensive photo section. I was able to track down photos that no one had ever seen. These are the original photographs from the original photographers of the day. And so I have photographs that really lay out the story, including every single major character in the story. Number two, the publisher required an extensive bibliography because they were not absolutely convinced everybody would think it was true. And so I have a massive bibliography where they made me document every fact in that book, which is interesting. But I can, my books, including all my fiction books, are at jerryjamison.com. Jamison is Jamison, jerryjamison.com. You can sign up there for my newsletter, and I communicate through my website primarily. The book's available, Barnes & Nobles, all those retail outlets, certainly on Amazon. It's available, and it's available in both Kindle and hardcover.
Very good. I'll be sure to put links to your website and the book in our show notes so people can easily find you, Jerry. And I'll say thank you so much for stopping by Uncorking a Story and letting me uncork yours.
Well, you asked great questions. It was fun to talk about the story behind the story, because that's usually not what's discussed, but that was really interesting for me. I've been on a long journey, and I'm grateful for this chapter in it.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.